Lizzi Collinge.
Hello.
MP for Morecambe, hence my joke earlier, you see. Yeah,
it works now,
but you
doesn't
did
it?
Now it works, but
you
it's
can groan away.
It's too late. MP for Morecambe and Lonsdale is the new chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Humanist Group. And she takes on the chairship of the group at a time when it has never been more numerous. I think we've now got 132.
I think so, yes. 132 members, which is, I think, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, APPG, All-Party Parliamentary Group in Parliament.
I think it was the biggest, and then electoral reform overtook us.
Yes, fair elections.
Fair elections. So, boo. I mean, many of us, boo. Well, we'll come on to that, if that's how it is. The APPG, the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Humanism, has been around for a very long time and is one of the oldest as well as one of the largest groups. And we're very pleased that Lizzi, as the new MP, has taken it on. And you've always actually been a humanist, haven't you?
Yes. We were chatting about this the other day. So I was brought up in a Christian household, but I never remember ever believing in God. My mother assures me I definitely believed in Father Christmas for a while. But it just seemed very unlikely. But it's taken until, reasonably well into my adulthood for that to then codify into me calling myself a humanist, which I made the mistake of saying in my first speech in Parliament. And here we are.
That's right. We do listen. We do watch. Our policy team keep an eye on it.
Yes. And over that time, the ideas of humanism, even when I didn't know that's what it was, have really informed my thinking. And I think it really informs my politics and a lot of my colleagues' politics as well, actually. Because that driver of, one, believing that humans are important and believing that you have ethical and moral responsibilities, and believing that you can influence the world is, I think, really important when we're talking about politics.
And those are the values that inform your politics as well, I guess, sort of thinking about the questions this morning about humanism and politics. For you, humanism is political. Absolutely.
Well, everything's political. I don't know if there's any Skunk Anansie fans in the room, but there's a very good song. I think everything's political. I don't believe people when they tell me they don't have political opinions. I just think they don't know that they're political. Because, when I do my school visits, I always try and say what politics is. And all politics is beliefs about how the world is, beliefs about how the world should be, and beliefs about how best to get to where the world should be. That's all politics is. And when people tell me they're not very political, well, no, they might not go to Labour Party conference, because only weirdos go to Labour Party conference and enjoy it. And they might not, read the paper every day or watch Parliament TV on catch-up, which I can't believe recommend.
I can't believe there are such people.
It was a very good debate. But people do have beliefs about how the world is. They almost certainly have beliefs about how the world should be. And most people have opinions about how you get from one state to the other. And so for me, everything is political, whether we're talking about potholes or I was county councillor for a long time. I spent a lot of time talking about potholes. I'm very glad that I spend less time talking about potholes now as an MP. But, whether it's potholes or whether it's how you organise your education system or whether it's what's going on in the world or climate change or whatever, how you think you should move forward is, I think, an inherently political question, informed by your beliefs.
And how important do you think it is when we obviously said, will you join the Humanist Group? You said yes. Then Rachel Hopkins, who many of you will have seen at previous events.
Who is beautiful.
Who is a wonderful person. And she became
PPS.
A PPS.
Private parliamentary...
Very important acronym. And so she could no longer chair the group, and we asked you to do it. So you must think that it is important for humanists to organise in Parliament.
Yeah, absolutely, because organising is how you get things changed, right? So, probably the most salient debate that humanists have been campaigning on for over 100 years is currently in Parliament, assisted dying. And it is only through organising in groups, I mean, that's all political parties are, is groups of people who more or less share the same beliefs, right? It's only by organising in groups, by working together, you might almost say by the strength of our common endeavour, we achieve more than we achieve alone. And that's how you get it. And I think the more time I spend in Parliament, the more important I think it is for humanist voices to be part of it. I've been appointed by the Prime Minister to be a faith and belief champion, which is quite funny. And I've started going to interfaith things, which, to be honest, sorry, Andrew, it's not really my bag. But
she enjoys it very much. If there are any press in the room, it's a vital activity in the building.
It is a vital activity. But it is a vital activity, and that's the point.
And you've been just to be clear, you're the humanist champion.
I'm the humanist champion for the Labour Party, alongside Baroness Thornton. Thornton. Good. I'm very, very bad at names, which is why I love when you're in events where you have name tags on, because that's literally the only way I'll remember anyone's name is by reading it. So going to those meetings, talking about, the future of Interfaith Week, or talking about how the Labour Party interacts with different faith and belief communities, makes it really clear that humanist voice needs to be there. Because, if I hadn't been in that room, I think the conversations would have gone a different way. And I think sometimes...
Any examples?
There's a private meeting, I can't tell you, sorry.
Yeah. But this is a private meeting.
It feels super private and intimate. Buy me a bottle of wine later.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I can't be
I like that she said bottle, not glass. Don't you like enjoy that moment?
It's been one of those weeks.
We'll come on to that. Yeah, but so you were saying, being in the room and being organised as a humanist changes the direction of the conversation, very different from what it would have been without you. Yeah,
it absolutely does. And, if humanists weren't organising in Parliament, we wouldn't have had a debate on humanist marriage, which I think is an issue of fundamental rights. If we didn't have humanists in Parliament, I think the debate on assisted dying would be a lot poorer than it is. And, if we didn't organise on that basis as well. And it touches, obviously there are campaigns that humanism has been involved with for a very long time. But for example, we have a problem at the moment. And that problem is that the Crown Prosecution Service is prosecuting people for things that I believe are blasphemy. And that's it. A very, very deeply unpleasant man, who I would not like to spend any time with, was recently prosecuted for burning a Quran. Now, it was a complicated case. He was assaulted in the midst of burning this Quran. He's a horrible human being, to be honest, from what I've read.
He has some horrible opinions.
He had some horrible opinions. Mm-hmm. Well corrected. Thank you, Andrew.
He is redeemable.
Of course he's redeemable. Everyone's redeemable. Everyone. I have to believe that. But he was prosecuted basically for burning a Quran. Now, it was rude, and he did it outside the Turkish embassy. And I've had to explain to a lot of people that Turkey is a secular country. So what he did was offensive, it was gratuitous, it was unpleasant. But should it be illegal? I don't think so. But there is a loophole in our Public Order Act. One section of the Public Order Act says, it's about racial hate speech. It's about hate speech, basically. And then it says, but these won't apply if all you're doing is being rude about someone's religion or talking about your own religion. That's it. But that is not mirrored in another section of the Act. And this guy was prosecuted under another section of the Act. There were other cases where, a Christian preacher, he was not convicted, but a Christian preacher was just proselytizing and being a bit rude about Islam, right? And he was prosecuted. And that's worrying to me. I believe very strongly we should have laws that protect people, that protect their freedom, their safety, their ability to live their lives free of fear. But laws that protect ideas, I am less comfortable with.
Maybe we should explain why you've gone into that discussion now, because, so this is something that we're hoping to address through some parliamentary means.
Yeah.
I think we all have our own individual opinions on the sort of instance of Quran burning. And it's interesting to point out that this is a phenomenon that's happening across Western Europe. I was in Stockholm last week for a conference basically all about Quran burning in Denmark and Sweden and Norway, and what was happening and how the authorities were responding and so on, in which I learnt they are now burning 300 Qurans a month in Sweden. So, they're keeping Quran
that seems like a
publishers
bit of a waste of paper.
Well, I mean, it's very cold there. And so, but... I like the way you won't talk about private meetings, but you're happy to talk about this now. I'm sure that this is just a safer subject. And, the different ways that policy responds. And up to now, we haven't obviously had prosecutions for this in the UK. And as Lizzie has laid out, there are exemptions, effective loopholes that we didn't really even understood existed until this prosecution was brought. Some of you will remember that back in 2006, when the Racial and Religious Hatred Act was going through Parliament, we worked with other groups on putting in those defences that would be, ridicule doesn't count as incitement to hatred, critique doesn't count as incitement to hatred, dramatic expression, and so on and so forth. And we thought that was sorted. But now that this loophole is here, we're going to be trying to amend the Public Order Act to close that loophole. And I think the reason that you've got onto this is because you were saying that if humanists weren't in Parliament, it would be unlikely that would be something that was pursued.
I don't think this would have been picked up if humanists hadn't been in Parliament. And, it's not necessarily the most popular cause. And sometimes there are, advocating for unsympathetic people is, I think, an essential part of politics, but it's not a fun part of politics.
It's difficult on the left as well, isn't it? I mean, I think we had a lot of Labour MPs, well, not a lot, but, people from Labour or other left perspectives who are saying, am I going to defend this guy? Absolutely not. What an unappealing person to defend. I'm not going to get involved in that.
Well, I have had conversations with colleagues who argued that it obviously was inciting racial hatred because religious hatred, because it was outside the Turkish embassy. Hence, conversation about the Turkish secular state. And I have had people, and I understand that because we have a society that is fundamentally racist. We have a society that discriminates against people based on their perceived or actual religion, as well as their ethnic origin. And it's been a long time coming to get legal protections for people. And so I understand the reluctance. And as a Labour MP, protecting people who have been subject of systematic oppression and discrimination is really key to what I do. So it is uncomfortable and it is a tricky conversation. Some cases are more clear than others. But I do think it's quite a fundamental principle that we have to defend, that you can be rude about beliefs. And that is okay, because then if you get the government deciding what ideas you are and aren't allowed to be rude about, as we know, that takes us down a very, very dark path.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we'll have some questions about that as well. You got straight away there into a very difficult topic.
I always forget I might be recorded.
Oh, it might be. No, might be about it. It's live streamed on YouTube as we speak, around the world. And, wherever it can be. And I was going to ask you before we got into this topic about another very difficult topic, which you alluded to, which of course is the current debate on assisted dying. There can have been few new parliaments that, especially with so many new MPs, that were plunged so quickly into such a massive question of high social importance and what many people think of as the last great potential liberal bioethical reform that we need to secure. Although opinions, of course, differ about that. Just like personally, as a new MP, turning up bright-eyed and full of beans, and
I think you misunderstand a general election campaign, Andrew.
Completely
dragging
rested.
ourselves down to London.
And then instantly, Kim's pulled this in the private members' ballot, and she's going to do it. And then we all pile in with our briefings and our draft bills, and everyone starts going. And then the parliamentary and the media and the local debates. I mean, it's I'm trying to avoid the phrase baptism of fire. I don't know what the secular equivalent of that would be. It's a hell of a start.
It is a hell of a start. But a good one, I think, because I think it shows what Parliament can do. And I think because it's not whipped, so whipped is basically where the party tells you what you should vote for. It's a bit more complicated than that. I'm very happy to go into that if you want. But because this is something that MPs have to make their minds up about, and because it is about fundamental ethical considerations, it was a heck of a thing to get involved with. But I think it's important because in Parliament, you make life or death decisions every week. The fact that you might not realise you're doing it is because it gets dressed up in policy language and, this isn't about life or death. This is about, funding for the NHS, or this is about, how we organise, how we regulate education. But they are still issues that either fundamentally affect people's lives or could make people live or die. So there was some criticism when it came like, it's too early in the Parliament, these new MPs can't possibly cope with that. And it's like, well, actually, if you don't think you can, it's time to get your big girl pants on because, this is what we're here for. But I think it was a lot for colleagues because a lot of them aren't in the position that I'm in. I've been thinking about assisted dying for 20 years, and I have had... I've had a family member who starved themselves to death, and it's something that I care passionately about on a political level, but also on a personal level. But a lot of MPs, and I think this is surprising, but I think that shows my bias and my background. I think it's surprising that some people hadn't thought about it, but genuinely, some people hadn't. So at the time when you have no staff, you're getting 700 emails a week. Everything is new, everything's exhausting. And then suddenly you're being asked to think about some of the most fundamental ethical issues you can possibly grapple with. That's quite a lot. But I think it's important because it does show what Parliament can do. Because, the late 60s, no one remembers, the legislation that drafted the guidelines for the measurement of roads, or,
That would have been a perfect moment for someone to say, I do.
I do. It's very much the room for it, to be honest.
I wrote it. I drafted it.
But looking back at this Parliament, nobody's going to remember the metrology bill. I had to Google what metrology was, actually. It's not weather. It's weights and measures. And we have a colleague who's very into weights and measures, and watching him speak on it is a thing of beauty. If, like me, you're a bit of a nerd. So nobody's going to remember the metrology bill. Quite a lot of people won't remember the bus services bill, which I think's like cracking. They might remember nationalising the railways. They might remember the water bill special measures, maybe. Everyone's going to remember this, especially if it passes. This is going to be our chance to actually put a stamp on history as well as fundamentally improve people's lives. So I think it's a huge honour, absolutely huge honour.
And your experience of the actual, the debates and the briefing, and do you think, someone said that the second reading debate showed Parliament at its best. Well, I've got my views about that. I think probably you think it did.
I think it did. I think because of the tone.
The tone, yeah.
Whatever you think of the arguments put forward, and I think they varied in quality. The tone of the debate at the second reading in November was respectful. It was diligent, I think, in most cases. It recognised that the vast majority of colleagues there were coming at this from a very honest angle, were desperately trying to do their best. And even when they were disagreeing with me, I think, I could understand where they were coming from and what was driving what they were saying. And I think it was very respectful of the fact that this is a really significant issue. And it showed cross-party working as well. So I think that was one of the most interesting things for many of us. it was one of the first times we were working across party in Parliament. Now, as a former county councillor, I've worked across party quite a few times, but, you know, political parties are very tribal. And so to humanise each other, I think, is really important. So I worked with Kit Malthouse, who's one of the good Tories, and yes, I disagree with him on so much, but I really like him. And
his speech was wonderful. His second reading speech was incredibly good.
It was.
He's a member of the Parliamentary Humanist Group as well.
He's a good lad. And to the weirdness, sorry, I have to tell this story because it's one of my favourite stories. So, when you are passing legislation, the whips basically tell you where to go, like, because there'll be amendments and there's weird parliamentary procedures that you have to follow. So because this wasn't a party vote, we had people just appointed from the campaign groups to whip. So I was in the voting lobby, making sure people, after the first vote, didn't go away, that they stayed around because there might be more votes. So you stand in the voting lobby and you go, please stay, more votes later, don't leave the estate. And as I was shouting this, Rishi Sunak walked past, which is one of the most peculiar experiences in my entire life. And then the Prime Minister walked past. So, yeah, anyway, sorry.
And they both voted for it.
And they both voted for it.
Yeah,
they were in the correct lobby. So I think it was brilliant. And that cross-party working with the Lib Dems especially, I think is really important, because I think there's a real risk in politics that we dehumanise our opponents, that we stop thinking of them as people. And that's a really dangerous place to be, frankly, really dangerous. And so I think that humanising effect as well. And a lot of people told very personal stories as well. But now we're at report stage, so it's a bit tetchier.
It's getting a bit uglier now, that's right. I think
some shenanigans.
Well, that's right. I think the opponents have been pretty unscrupulous, actually, throughout. I mean, the last time I remember such unscrupulosity, if that's a scrupulousness, was the same-sex marriage bill. Yeah, when they behaved in this very similar way. Very odd arguments, very bad faith arguments, throwing everything at it, in a way that seemed almost unreasonable. And I think there is a bit of that.
There is a bit of that, I think. I think it's a mixture. So I would say kind of the majority of people who voted a different way to me did so because they thought they were doing the right thing and in truly good faith. But there have been some aspects that I found quite difficult to deal with. So yesterday, there's lots of weird parliamentary rules. One of them is, on a Friday, you have to finish by 2:30. Like, it just can't be extended. The Speaker can't do it, no one can do it. So we were in a position where all the votes on amendments and new clauses would have been done by 2:30. And the outcome of that would be we could go into next Friday and go straight into the debate. That would have been the outcome of finishing the votes today, and then next Friday go straight into the debate. What happened was, on the penultimate vote, 2 or 3 at most of the opposing side stayed in the voting lobby and hid in the toilets, which is quite amusing. Sorry. And I don't know whether I'm meant to talk about this, but it's true and it happened, so I will. And that meant you can't go to the next vote until the lobbies are clear. That's one of the rules. So by staying in the lobby and waiting until the Speaker sent the Sergeant at Arms in with his literal sword, which is, again, amusing, we couldn't have the final vote. And that was a deliberate tactic to end the day, one, on an amendment that they won, which was about talking to under 18s about assisted dying, which was the only amendment that they won. All the other amendments went the way that I thought they should do. But also it means that next Friday, we're going straight into voting at 9:30 a.m. Now, for colleagues, that actually creates a problem, because a lot of them find it quite hard. If they've gone up to their constituency on the Thursday, for example, they might find it hard to get back for 9:30 a.m. on the Friday, and this is known. So it creates hassle for colleagues, but also, in my opinion, it was frustrating the proper process of Parliament. And that feels, I don't like that. I like people to be good sports and, stay within. And I don't really like people playing silly buggers like that. It really winds me up. So yeah, that I found quite difficult because I think that the group I've been part of have tried everything we can to make it a process that involves everyone and to answer questions.
Absolutely, which is very hard with the private members' bill process to do. Okay, right, I'm going to come to questions from the audience.
The first question that you covered about a hate crime, you said there was a loophole. What is the loophole?
So basically, one part of the Act has an exemption for ridiculing, mocking, being rude about people's faith or belief. Another part of the Act, which deals with similar but not exactly the same offences, doesn't have that exemption from prosecution. So basically, the Act says you can't do this, this and this. That's an offence. But if actually all you're doing is being rude about someone's religion or being mocking, then that doesn't count. So that's in one part, and it's not in the other part, that kind of exemption.
It's a list of defences.
Yeah, it's a list of defences. Sorry, thank
basically.
You.
So if you're prosecuted under incitement to religious hatred, there's a list of defences that you can use to say why you're not actually committing that offence, like it's artistic expression, or you're criticising ideas, or you're expressing. If you're prosecuted under this other section, there is no such list of defences, so they can sort of get you that way, which wasn't an issue at the time when the original bill was going through in 2006, because I don't think anyone thought that anyone would ever be prosecuted under that other section, but that's essentially the problem. And that's what Lizzie and hopefully other parliamentary colleagues will be attempting to reform.
And
this man might still have ended up convicted, of course, but not for burning a Quran, but for some of the other things that he said or did, or all the rest of it. Yes.
Does the Parliamentary Humanist Group have a view on decriminalising abortion?
Yes,
is that likely?
We think we should.
Okay.
And in fact, there are amendments being put in to the crime and policing bill, which is coming back to report stage, which is when you debate amendments, next week. And there's an amendment by Tonya Antonazzi, which is supported by over 50 providers of abortion or campaign groups around women's rights. Yeah, and Humanists UK are supporting it. I'm one of the lead co-sponsors. I don't think that's really what we're called. And yeah, that will be debated and voted on Tuesday, I think. So I'm hoping to speak to that.
Lizzie, what role does the humanist politics have in resolving the civil unrest we've been observing in Ballymena in Northern Ireland?
That's a really good question. One I'm a little reluctant to speak to because I don't know that much about exactly what's going on there. I do think there is a role for promoting inter-community conversation as a good in itself. But I actually don't want to answer that question because I don't think I know enough about it.
What about the summer riots last year here?
That's a very good point, actually. Yeah. So I think the role is a general one. We have some really good kind of inter-community and interfaith activities going on in the UK, but sometimes what they do is self-appointed community leaders talking to each other, and sometimes that's helpful. Sometimes it's not, and actually you're not talking to the right people. And a lot of the people who were involved in the rioting last year, and I get a lot of emails complaining that some people got convicted and put in prison for acts of violence, or particularly actually for posting online. And yeah, I think there's work to do there. I think also in a kind of wider sense around forming the political conversation, because there's a real, it's not a risk, it's happening. Our political conversation is getting very heated, particularly around things like immigration. There are people who are considered to be mainstream politicians who, in my opinion, the way they talk about, for example, migrants who come over on boats is dehumanising, it is othering, and it sets people up to be able to treat other people badly. And that's a very big problem.
What do you think? I mean, I think there was a lack at the time of the riots in England. I appreciate it's different from your question, but people from Northern Ireland Humanists might come and talk to you about it as well afterwards. But here in England, I thought there was a lack of really any sort of values-led political statements about this. We heard a lot about policing, the full force of the law, how rioters were violent criminals and were not, but we didn't hear much about we want Britain to be a successful society where everyone is free, where we can live together. You know, there wasn't as much of that, and I think maybe
I think
humanist politicians
that's
can
fair.
speak that way.
Yeah, I think that's fair, actually. I mean, there were some of us talking about that, but I think you're right that the primary response was kind of a crime and policing response, and in
That felt safe, maybe? That felt like a safe
Well, I
thing to
don't know
talk
about safe, but I think also it is a way of making sure, it's a different way, but it's a way of delegitimising the defences people were saying. So people were like, well, it's no wonder they're rioting, you know, there's all these migrants coming over. And it's like, well, no, what they're doing, what I think they were doing was breaking things, because breaking things is fun. That's what I think they were doing. They were engaging in violent disorder, and it needed a kind of almost public health response. And that's why I really think it was the right thing to stamp down immediately and be very firm and, you know, take a kind of almost a broken windows approach to it. Because it's contagious, rioting is contagious. But I think it is a way of delegitimizing it, like saying this isn't political violence, this is criminal violence. These aren't political prisoners, these are criminals. But I think I agree with you that that was a gap and there could have been more done to talk about that. But it also depends on what communities you're talking to and what messages work in different communities. Like that does matter. And yeah.
Okay, Raj.
I'm just going to stand so everybody can see me. My name's Raj. I'm the events lead for Sheffield Humanists, or as of today, basically.
Great, well done.
So, I had nothing to do with this, so I get no credit for this.
Yeah, that's right. You're now responsible for all this event.
If everything gets set on fire, I guess everyone's going to be looking at me. I just want to say, first of all, welcome to Sheffield. Thank you very much for coming to our city. It's lovely to see everybody here. If you are a Sheffield person and you want to speak to a Sheffield humanist, come and speak to me or Glenn at the stage. I'll stop advertising that now.
Yeah.
The question,
is this a question, Raj?
Yeah. The question I wanted to ask also, I'm an ex-political activist. I'm a doctor. I work in or will be working in Doncaster. Obviously, I've got a lot of interest. I got married in Sheffield at a humanist ceremony. I think the question, this sounds a bit weird because I'm sort of setting you up, but I'm not really. I think if you're not involved, if you're not involved in politics, I think it can be quite hard to appreciate this. But you talked earlier about the fact that you have colleagues who've never thought about assisted dying, and I think the thing I wanted to sort of just get you to talk a little bit about is the experience of having somebody come to a constituency surgery to talk to you about an issue you have never heard of, because those of us who aren't weird and don't get involved in political activism probably don't realise how much of an impact that has. So could you talk to us a little bit about why it's useful for people to still go and write to, or more importantly, go to constituency surgery and speak to their MP?
Can't believe you're making me encourage people to write to MPs. My colleagues will not be impressed. Do you know what really is impactful is hearing people's individual stories. And you're right about the amount of times someone comes to you with an issue and you're thinking, I don't even know what this is. You're like doing a little Google. But then they talk to you about it, and your understanding of the world grows. And I think that's something that's really important in politics, which is why I try and make time, and it's desperately difficult to, but I try and make time to do things like this, or I'm going to a lecture next week on AI, because I think every other person's experience that you hear grows your worldview and grows your understanding. And it can be very challenging to your worldview. So I had a conversation with a constituent who is vehemently opposed to assisted dying, vehemently, but was a doctor. And having, it didn't change my mind in any way, shape or form, but what it did do is give me a bit more of an insight into some of the emotional drivers that were driving this conversation. You know, I've met in the last couple of weeks with some trans constituents because of, frankly, the abhorrent behaviour of the Equality and Human Rights Commission. And every time that happens, people's worldview grows a little bit. And I had a lovely phone call with someone from the Green Lane Association the other week, and I didn't know what green lanes were. And even really nice, fun things like that you had no idea existed, but again, grows your understanding of the world. So I think it is really important. If you do email your MP, can I just plead with you? Don't get cross if they don't reply, either immediately or even at all, to be honest, if it's a campaign email. So, like, I get 900 to 1,000 constituent contacts every month. So about 80 to 100 of them are direct casework, where I am helping them with something, whether that's a pothole or a broken bridge or, you know, DWP. I don't like the DWP. I'm a project manager by trade, and the desperation to go into the DWP and just make stuff work. So I get about 80 to 100 people that every month, and then I get another between 750 and 900 emails a month about issues and policies. And MPs do take notice of these. They do read them, and their staff quite often will say, you know, this is what we're getting in lots about this. You must prioritise reading this email because it's got some brilliant information or a fantastic story. But just the sheer scale of trying to respond to that is immense. So I'm just pleading for a little patience. Thank you.
Thank you, Lizzie. This was very interesting. And it's great to hear a politician who's a humanist and feels very aligned with kind of like things I believe in. I happen to vote to the same party that you belong to as well. My MP is very not humanist, very much the opposite in all sorts of topics. And I'm not sure what am I lamenting, the UK political system. I'd be surprised if you're able to change that. But kind of like I don't want to write...
I'm trying.
I don't want to write to my MP. I want to write to you. Like I'd like to feel like someone is representing me.
You'll get in trouble if you do that.
No, I understand. I'm not suggesting that. But like how, other than moving to your constituency, what can I do to get the politics that
Move
I'd
to
like?
Morecambe.
Right? Or like voting to a party that I strongly disagree with.
That's a good question. So how do if we've got a dreadful MP like he has, we're not going to ask who she is. Oh, sorry. Okay, I know who it is. We're not going to ask who it is. You know, how can he nonetheless make his contribution to the movement within politics? Yes. Second question.
Good afternoon. First of all, something came into my head while you were talking. It's not really doing my question, but think about this carefully. Don't all boo me and throw things. There is a simple solution to what happened in Northern Ireland. It's called the Parachute Regiment.
Right, boo.
Right. No, it's not, that's not my main question.
My hearing's not very good, so I don't think I heard all of that.
My question's about assisted dying.
Yeah.
And it goes on to what you were saying about contacting MPs. I have written to my constituent MP, I've emailed the MP who introduced the Act, and I've emailed the department who handles it. I didn't even get the usual instant return acknowledgement, thank you, we'll get in touch with you, let alone having heard a reply. My question was this, and I've never heard it asked anywhere. During the whole process of setting this bill up, did anyone talk to the insurance companies?
Yes, I can answer
about the whether assisted dying constituted suicide?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so the Association of British Insurers has said that they will pay out any insurance policy in the event of assisted death. Yeah. Written evidence in both Westminster and the Scottish Parliament. Yeah. So we don't need to answer that now. Excellent. Good. Yes, it was very clear. Yeah, last question.
I think the average view of British politics would say it's not very religious, but I have a concern that actually in the Commons we have a lot of MPs who I think are quite deeply religious, but closeted. and then not disclosing it. I'd like to get your sense. Do you feel that is the case, and to what extent does that come up in your conversations, that actually a lot of public policy is driven by people who have quite strong religious views that they're not disclosing?
This has been very hotly discussed recently,
Yeah.
that particular question. Should we start with the question about
so
how
getting involved. So get involved with Humanists UK campaigns, get involved with other campaign groups. Do still contact your MP, because it is important. Like, you don't have to be confrontational about it. Some of my favourite emails are people just going, I'm not sure we agree on this, but this is what I think. I don't think it's not worth your while to contact them. But do get involved in more national campaigns, help out. You can always go and campaign in seats nearby. You can find an MP that you like and campaign for them. There's lots of ways of getting involved, and there's the kind of elected politics, but politics is so much wider than that. There's so much community organising that needs to be done. So I think there's a few different routes.
You could become all political parties. Let's give a shout out to them. All the major political parties, with one exception perhaps, have humanist groups inside them. So there is Green Humanists, Labour Humanists, the Humanists and Secularist Lib Dems, the Conservative Humanist Association. So that's another way to actually organise within a party, even if you have sympathy, as you say you do, in a party's direction.
Do join Labour Humanists.
Do join Labour Humanists. There you go.
And
any of the other political party groups.
Labour Humanists.
Okay, and the last question. This is a very vexed question recently. Should politicians who've got religious beliefs, well, you answer the question. How do they navigate them? Do they have to disclose them? Do they not disclose them?
No, I don't think you do have to disclose your personal beliefs, actually, but I think that's a fundamental matter of, I think it's helpful to help people understand your motivations, but I don't think that MPs have to lay bare their souls every time they talk about stuff. I do think, though, that it depends on the MP. So there are some MPs who are religious, but who genuinely are able to set that aside. And as I think I said earlier, everyone is driven by their beliefs. Everyone. So being aware of what those beliefs are and aware of the influences on your thinking is quite important. And there are some MPs, I think, who, and it's very hard to know because you can't get inside people's heads. So this is just my impression of a small number, is that their motivation, particularly on assisted dying, is quite religious, but those are not the arguments that they'll make. Now, that's not to say they might hold both. It might not just be that they have a religious motivation, they also have a lot of other motivations. And I really have to say this, a lot of the opposition to assisted dying, I think, has come from a very legitimate concern for people who are vulnerable. Now, I disagree with their conclusion, but I think it's a legitimate question to ask. I think... something else I was going to say, I've forgotten.
Well, you've said so much and all of it wonderful.
Thank you,
so
dear.
I think that, I think we can all agree...
Humanists.
Shh, all other parties are available. But I think we switch this mic off. All the way, I think we can all agree that we couldn't ask for a more articulate, eloquent, intelligent, thoughtful chair of the Parliamentary Humanist Group than you. Show her our appreciation, please.